Good morning, everyone. We're waiting for everyone to enter the webinar. We'll get started in just a minute here. You're just joining us. We're giving it just a minute here so everyone can get logged onto the webinar. We'll be starting in just a minute. Looks like we're almost there. Excellent. Well, we may still have a few more people joining us today, but I'm going to go ahead and get us started in the interest of time because we have a lot of material to cover today. Good morning, everyone. My name is Barbara Kampminer. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for the Office of Public School Construction. And today we have a webinar for you to talk about the California Preschool, Transitional Kindergarten, and Full Day Kindergarten program and the Financial Hardship program. So we have a lot of material to cover today. We've got our subject matter experts from those two areas here to go over applying for the program, as well as what the financial hardship process looks like as well, particularly as it relates to the preschool TK and full day kinder program. So we'll have a couple presentations, and then there will be an opportunity at the end for participants to ask questions as well. So you can just use the raise hand feature at the end of that, and we will be getting to as many questions as we can. We are also recording this webinar, so if somebody was not able to attend today, but you know that they would benefit from this information, we will be posting this webinar after it concludes and a little bit later on. So that will be available to you as well. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you find this information helpful. We're very excited to have a new round of funding for this program coming up very soon. And hopefully this will help you with a successful application. So with that, I'm going to introduce Lindsay Walden. She is the supervisor for the Preschool, Transitional Kindergarten, and Full Day Kindergarten program. And she's going to kick us off with information about the program and how to apply. Lindsay.
Thanks, Barbara. Okay. So the Office of Public School Construction is staffed to the State Allocation Board, or the SAB, on behalf of the Department of General Services. We're headquartered in the Ziggurat building in West Sacramento, and our staff assists all California school districts. So OPSC's core function is to administer the state's $42 billion school facility program, or SFP. This program is funded predominantly from voter-approved general obligation bonds, and we provide matching funding to local education agencies in order to fund school construction programs. So currently there are 6 active programs under the SFP. We have new construction, modernization, facility hardship, seismic mitigation, the charter school facilities program, and the career technical education facilities program. In 2022, OPSC successfully processed $1.5 billion in funding applications for new construction and modernization school facility program. These projects will receive cash proceeds from fall 2022 and the spring 2023 state general obligation bond sales, as well as the state's general fund. So with these funds, more than 1,700 new classrooms were built to house incoming students, and nearly 7,300 classrooms were modernized. Additionally, OPSC processed $142.8 million under the Charter School Facilities Program to construct new or rehabilitate existing charter school facilities for 13 projects. So today we are going to review the program. So the California Preschool, Transitional Kindergarten, Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program, which we reference as the program. And as Barbara mentioned, I'm Lindsay Walden and the program supervisor for the program, and I'm joined today as well as our programs manager, Joshua Potter. So program overview. Thank you. So Assembly Bill 1808 established the Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program and was signed by the governor on June 27th of 2018. AB 1808 initially appropriated $100 million out of the general fund to the state allocation board for this program. The $100 million was allocated during the first two funding rounds, which took place in 2019. Assembly Bill 130, which was signed by the governor in July of 2021, allocated additional funds and expanded eligibility to include California preschool and transitional kindergartners. An additional $100 million was added to the program in July of 2022. The program provides one-time grants to increase the number of full-day classrooms by either constructing new school facilities or retrofitting existing school facilities. Additionally, funds will be provided to school sites that are adding or expanding a preschool or transitional kindergarten program. The program allows for funding for existing full-day kindergartners and not prospective full-day kindergarten pupils, also known as growth. Next slide, please. So application submittal funding rounds. So the 2022 round took place and allocated $225 million to 72 projects, and all remaining funds are going to be allocated to the round taking place in this year in 2023. So we will have approximately $360 million available for the February round. All program funds must be encumbered by the SAB by June 30th of 2024. Applications that were not funded from the April 2022 round will need to resubmit applications. Since the program is using funding rounds, the date the application was received by OPSC will not determine funding order. Applications with district representative signatures and all necessary documents must be received by OPSC by the last day of the funding round, as we've determined by the SAB. Thank you. Funding. So program funding is provided as grants and does require a local district matching share. This is similar to the SFP program, and which provides funding for modernization of existing facilities to extend the useful life of the facilities and to enhance the learning environment, as well as new construction funding, which is provided primarily to fund the construction of new classroom facilities and to accommodate the growing enrollment. Program base grants are determined based on the eligible project scope and are spelled out in statute. This program uses the current SFP kindergarten through 6th new construction and modernization pupil grants to calculate the amounts for this program's new construction and retrofit grants, and will be adjusted concurrently with the SFP construction cost index. So for full-day kindergarten applicants, school districts must not have any contracts awarded for full-day kindergarten projects prior to July 1st of 2018. For preschool and transitional kindergarten applicants, school districts must not have any contracts awarded for the project prior to July 1st of 2021. And for community college districts applying for preschool pupils, community colleges must not have awarded any contracts for the project prior to July 1st of 2022. Next slide, please. Thank you. So for funding, excluding school districts that receive financial hardship funding, program grants will be provided as follows. So for projects that are converting from a part-day program to a full-day program, for kindergarten, preschool, and or transitional kindergarten programs, a 75-25 state and local share basis for new construction and retrofit projects will be awarded. For non-conversion projects, so districts that have been already offering full-day kinder, grants will be based on a 50-50 state and local share for new construction projects and a 60-40 basis for our retrofit projects. Next slide. So who can apply? So for funding requested for full-day kindergarten or transitional kindergarten, eligible school districts must meet the following criteria. School districts must hold the title to the real property where the facilities are located. Therefore, projects located on leased land are not eligible for funding through this program. Districts can only use program funds to add or expand a transitional kindergarten program or adequately house a full-day kindergarten program. The district must also be currently lacking the facilities to adequately provide full-day instruction for existing pupils at the project school site. Statute only allows school districts to apply for funding for full-day kindergarten or transitional kindergarten classrooms. However, if school districts that provide kindergarten instruction may apply on behalf of a charter school that is located in district-owned facilities. Next slide. So continuing with who can apply. So in order to be eligible to apply for preschool funding, school districts county offices of education and community colleges must meet the following requirements. They must also currently lack the facilities to adequately provide full-day instruction for those pupils at the project site, as well as hold the title to the real property where the facilities will be located. So projects located on leased lands, again, are not eligible for program funding. Next slide. Classroom capacity. So a district will be considered lacking full-day facilities if the site's current enrollment data exceeds the existing kindergarten compliant classroom capacity prior to the construction of the project. So compliant classroom refers to classrooms that met Title V requirements at the time of construction, classrooms constructed as kindergarten classrooms or altered to house kindergarten students regardless of its current use will be included when determining existing kindergarten classroom capacity. So for an example, if a school district has 40 kindergarten pupils that are not housed in kindergarten facilities, they're eligible for 2 classrooms, which equates to 50 pupil grants. So in other words, grants are based on increments of 25 pupils per classroom. Next slide. So how to determine the capacity need. So if a site is adding or expanding the program, they may use the average of the current school year's upper grade levels, first, second, and third grade to determine the classroom need. So determine enrollment data for preschool and transitional kindergarten projects. OPSC will use higher grade level enrollment from first, second, and third grades of the current school year on the school site where the project facilities are located. And this will be estimated to prior year enrollment. So all current first graders were assumed eligible for transitional kindergarten 2 years prior, second graders 3 years prior, and third graders 4 years prior, with the same relation to preschool kids 1 year before being transitional kindergarten age. So alternatively, school districts can use 3 years of actual transitional kindergarten enrollment in lieu of higher grade levels if available. Next slide. So as an example of a full day project. So in this example, before the project, the school site had 2 part-day kindergarten classrooms and 1 part-day transitional kindergarten classroom with 50 pupils in each classroom. So 25 in the morning and 25 in the afternoon. So in order to provide full day instruction for all pupils, the school district would need 3 new classrooms. The need for 3 classrooms translates to being eligible for 75 pupil grants. So after the project, the school would end up with 6 total full-day classrooms with 25 pupils in each classroom. Next slide. So types of grants. The 2 main grants offered in this program are new construction and retrofit grants. New construction grants seek to increase the number of full-day classrooms by the addition of a classroom or classrooms to an existing school site. Retrofit grants seek to increase the number of full-day classrooms by retrofitting an existing facility that is not a kindergarten classroom. So for TK and full-day kinder, they can have both of these grants. Districts would need to certify if there are any classrooms on the site that met kindergarten Title V design requirements when they were built, or if they were later retrofitted to do so. And for preschool, school districts will need to certify if there are any classrooms that met preschool requirements when they were built or later retrofitted to meet that requirement. Part of the verification process will include consulting with the California Department of Education, or CDE, to determine if an application should be limited to a retrofit project. So consultation with CDE will be conducted on a project-by-project basis. OPSC will use enrollment data and site maps to verify a school site's overall need for funding based off of enrollment patterns and the capacity at the site. So the program does not allow for the construction of new portable classrooms, but it does allow for the retrofitting of existing portables on that site. And for retrofit funding, at least 1 wall must remain standing. Next slide. Continuing with types of grants. So districts may apply for funding with or without an advance release of funds. Projects do not need to be plan or construction ready, and districts may apply with the request of advance funding if the project is merely an idea and moving forward would be dependent on state funding. So new construction or retrofit grants request without an advance release of funds for districts that have all required supporting documentation. This would include DSA plan approval and CDE final plan approval. New construction or retrofit grants with an advance fund release for districts that have none or only a portion of that required supporting documentation. So districts doing new construction projects can request an advance funding for design costs and/or site acquisition costs. Advance funds for design costs would be 40% of the new construction base grant. Districts doing retrofit projects can request an advance release of funds for design costs, and that will be 25% of the retrofit base grant. And just note that districts do not need to be financial hardship to receive an advance. Next slide. So types of grants. So base grants for both new construction and retrofit projects can be increased by some additional grants or supplementals. So for new construction projects, districts may also request additional funding for site acquisition, hazardous waste removal, automatic fire detection or alarm system, automatic sprinkler system, site development, multi-level classroom construction, or project assistance. The site development grant is the new construction grant and will be increased by 35% of that base grant. And project assistance is for school districts that have an enrollment of 2,500 or less. For retrofit projects, districts may also request additional funding. So they may request funding for automatic fire. They can do site development as well, and it will be 35% of that base grant. And then utility costs as necessary for retrofitting 50 years or older permanent buildings. That cost will be 15% of that base grant. And then again, project assistance. Next slide. So the application process. Next slide. So what makes a complete application? So all school districts requesting program funding must submit all of the following. 1, a complete and valid application for funding, which is the form SAB 7001. The school board resolution must be included in the application submittal for TK and preschool projects. For applications only requesting full-day kindergarten funding, a school resolution must be submitted prior to the project completion. Districts must submit a site map, and in that site map, they must identify and label the current use of all facilities on the school site, identify and label all classrooms built or retrofitted as kindergarten or preschool classrooms, regardless of its current use, identify and any program eligible classrooms that will not provide full day instruction by the completion of the project. Then the districts must also submit documentation verifying the district's overall enrollment at that site. So CalPads must be submitted with the application submittal, and that must show the current enrollment and as well as the 3 immediately preceding enrollment years. So program staff has found that the CalPads reports 1.4 and 5.1 are the most helpful for districts, but we do welcome any other CalPads reports as well. And it is good to note that OPSC Online may be used for this program. And so if you do use OPSC Online, the submittal of the 7001 won't be required, as we'll go through that later. But all other documentation that we've discussed will need to be uploaded. Next slide. So continuing with what makes a complete application. So all school districts that are requesting program funding must also submit the documents that we discussed in the previous slide, as well as a narrative. So the narrative must be a description of the proposed project. So the district must explain the proposed scope of work in the project plans, how many classrooms were kindergarten compliant at the time of construction, explain where kindergartners are currently being housed at the site, explain the district's planned kindergarten classroom usage by the completion of the project. Districts may still offer part-day kindergarten instruction, but the classrooms used for part-day would need to be identified on that site map and are not eligible for program funding. So a clear description of the current kindergarten program, specifically if the site is currently offering a full-day program, and if so, when did it begin? And if not, it must be offered by the completion of the project. Community college districts should also include the school district they operate a preschool program on behalf of or in lieu of in their narrative. Next slide. So all school districts that request program funding for preschool applications must also submit the county's most recent child care needs assessments, which is conducted by its regional local planning council for preschool age children, as well as a current or future contract with CDE to operate that preschool program. If a contract is not currently held, then the district will need to certify that a future one will be obtained. As well as school districts applying for preschool funds must note that all preschool classrooms must be built no less than 1,350 square feet. Next slide. So supporting documentation. So along with the documents we discussed in the previous few slides, districts that are applying for a new construction grant without an advance release of funds must submit with their 7001 the DSA application number, a DSA final plan approval letter, CDE final plan approval letter, and then if a district is requesting a site acquisition, the CDE final site approval letter. Next slide. So districts applying for a new construction grant with an advance release of funds for design and or site must submit the documents discussed, as well as a CDE contingent site approval letter if the district is requesting site acquisition. Next slide. So districts applying for a retrofit grant without an advance release of funds must also submit documents with their 7001, such as the DSA application number, DSA plan approval letter, CDE final plan approval letter, as well as identifying that site map if there are 50-year-old buildings or older that you're requesting a utilities grant for. And then districts applying for a retrofit grant with an advance release of funds for design costs must also submit that site map for 50-year-old buildings or older if that's being requested. Next slide. So how to submit an application on OPSC Online. Next slide. So there are a few ways to access OPSC Online. If you're on our main webpage for OPSC Online, you will see our homepage, as well as there's going to be a link in this presentation when it is uploaded. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, you will see a handful of OPSC Online links. So we can go to the next slide, please. And in here, you'll have access to featured links. And there is a direct link to OPSC Online sign-in page. You can also access this page by going to our resources page. And in this resources page, you will see our online application tools header. And within this link, you will see a link to the OPSC Online sign-in page, as well as a user guide for OPSC Online as well. So the sign-in page. So districts may submit their program applications via OPSC Online. So all school district representatives and district superintendents that are on record with OPSC Online or OPSC automatically have a user account in OPSC Online. And if you don't have an account, you may send a request by emailing OPSC Online support@dgs.ca.gov. Any OPSC Online user may draft an application, but only an authorized district representative can submit that application on behalf of their district. So next slide, please. So upon logging in, the user is directed to the main dashboard, and that dashboard displays all applications created by the authorized users of that district. All district-specific projects can be reviewed by district representatives or district superintendents. School district delegates are able to view any school districts they have been authorized to act on behalf of. The dashboard allows users to create new funding applications by clicking on Create New Funding Application, and you want to check on the status of an application. You can view drafted applications that have not yet been submitted, as well as sort applications by clicking on any column header. Users can search by entering in the application number in the search section and then clicking Search All. To create a program application for the California Preschool, TK, and FDK program, you can select the Create New Preschool, TK, FDK Funding Application. Next slide, please. So for a new application, if this is the first time submitting an application for funding, so the 7001, and the school district has never submitted a prior 7001 for the project, you want to select No. So please note that if the district would like to submit applications for multiple school districts or school sites, this application must be submitted separately. So each school site will be assigned a different application number. So if there's an existing application, so if the school district is submitting an updated or revised application for funding, you must return to your OPSC Online dashboard and select the project from that list of existing program applications in order to create an application for funding for full funding phases. Next slide. So here you'll want to select the applicable school district, county office of education, or community college if you are applying for preschool. You'll select the program type, so you can do new construction, retrofit, or combined with new construction and retrofit for that project. Also, a valid PTN is required for an application submittal, and a project tracking number, which is the PTN, is a universal number that is used by DSA and CDE, as well as OPSC to identify a project. One PTN can be used on associated applications. Next slide. So if the district is submitting an application for advance, you would select no in site info. The district must then specify what kind of advance funding is being requested. Generally, districts seeking an advance request design advance. Site advances are available to districts seeking site acquisition. If the district is submitting an application for full funding, you'll select yes. The school district must already have construction plan approval from DSA and the California Department of Education, or CDE. So all projects must select a school site from the drop-down menu, and if your site is not yet listed, just please email the OPSC Online Application Review Team email. That can help add a new site for you. So if the district is submitting an application for an advance, the remaining questions would be left blank. So anything in regards to your CDE approval date would be left blank, and you'll be able to move to the next page. Next slide. So project type. So here's where you'll enter the number of pupil grants that are being requested in each program type to be used for this application in increments of 25. So as well as the enrollment year down at the bottom should be, correspond with the date that will be on the entered in the certification section at the end of the application. So this year is to determine the district share for the full day kindergarten classrooms. And if a district does not know the exact year that full day instruction began, they can provide an estimated year. Oftentimes this happens if a school district started full day kindergarten maybe in the 90s and the current representative is unaware. Next slide. So here the district must include the enrollment data for all grades served at the school site. If that site does not offer a listed grade level, the district would just input 0 for the applicable grades. The district must accurately record the breakout of transitional kindergarten and full day kindergarten as reflected in their submitted CalPADs. Further instruction will be presented in the next slide. Next slide. So calculating transitional kindergarten and full day kindergarten from the CalPADs. So CalPADs groups full day kindergarten and transitional kindergarten students into one category of kindergarten pupils. When transcribing data from the CalPADs reports to the 7001, manual calculations must be made in order to determine full day kindergarten pupils. So most districts submit CalPADs reports 1.4 and 5.1, and those report substantiate their enrollment data. So report 1.4 displays the enrollment for all grade levels, and 5.1 displays the enrollment for various subgroups, including transitional kindergartners. So to obtain an accurate enrollment count for full day kindergartners, the district must subtract the number of recorded TK students on 5.1 and report from the recorded number of kindergarten students on the 1.4 report. This adjusted total must be recorded on the enrollment data table of the 7001. Next slide. So preference points. If the district is submitting multiple applications, you'll want to determine the priority in which the district would prefer the projects be funded. So in an instance, if the district is only submitting one application, you would input one of one projects. If you are seeking preference points for financial hardship status, you will want to check the box for yes. And financial hardship eligibility will be discussed in greater detail later in our presentation. If the district is not seeking financial hardship approval, then they should select no. And if the district must also answer if they have a recent approval for a valid financial hardship, and they would check yes here. So the free and reduced price meal, or the FRPM percentage, must be district-wide and not site-specific. So this is where you'll enter that percentage as well, and must be for the current enrollment year at the time of the application submittal. We'll go over how to find that FRPM percentage in the next slides. So here's the CDE's website. This is DataQuest, and this is where you can access the district's free and reduced price meals percentage. So when you navigate in the main page, you simply select district and then free and reduced price meals, and in the appropriate drop boxes here. You'll click submit and you'll be redirected to another page that prompts the user to select the appropriate enrollment year and enter the name of the district. So again, the FRPM will be automatically generated on the next page when you click submit. Community colleges applying for preschool funding will also use the FRPM of the district's bounds that they fall within. County offices of education applying for preschool funding will also select district for the selected level, and when the district is redirected to the next page, you'll just simply type in the name of your COE. Next slide. So additional grant requests. This is where you'll enter the number of new or retrofitted preschool, transitional kindergarten, and/or full-day kindergarten classrooms for which the district is requesting funding. If the district is requesting funding for a new construction project with site acquisition, the district will need to complete the respective items, providing the dollar amounts that pertain to the project. So both the 50% of the actual cost and 50% of the appraised value will need to be entered, and the funding is provided as the lesser of the two. And then for relocation or hazardous waste removal, the estimates may be used if actuals are not yet known. So to request all the other additional grants, the district simply checks the appropriate boxes, selecting yes or no if the district would like to request that grant. Next slide. Project progress. So if the district is applying for an advance funding, they should select no if they do not have contracts yet awarded. If the district is applying for full funding, they must select yes and complete the pop-up box that emerges, which will ask for contract award dates, notice to proceed, as well as type of contract. Next slide. The next two slides are for our licensed architects. If the district is applying for an advance, this section may be left blank. If the district is applying for full funding, the architect of record or the licensed architect must complete and certify this section. They'll provide the DSA approval date, the DSA application number, and certify that the plans and specifications meet the requirements for Title 24. Next slide. So the licensed design consultant, if the district again is applying for advance, the section may be left blank. And if they are applying for full funding, the section must be completed and certified by the licensed design consultant. Here, they will certify that they have developed a cost estimate of the proposed project and that the estimated construction costs of the work in the plans and specifications is at least 60% of the total grant amount, as provided by the state and district's matching share. In addition to a superintendent and authorized district representatives, architects may be provided with OPSC online access and can electronically sign this form as well. Next slide. So certifications. So the district will need to complete the certifications applicable to their application using the scroll box on the certification page. So for example, if applying for preschool classrooms, there is a section of preschool certifications that the district must fill out and complete. So some certifications that all districts will need to complete will include the section 4 resolution or other appropriate documentation supporting this application under Chapter 3, Part 10.5, Division 1, commencing with Section 17375 of the Education Code that was adopted by the school district's governing board or the designee of the superintendent of public instruction. The school district must also certify that classrooms were constructed or previously altered to meet requirements for a kindergarten classroom. So the district must certify that if they do have full day kindergarten construction, what date it started, and if they do not have it, they can certify that as well. Next slide. So financial hardship and funding order. So the financial hardship process. So this is a brief overview of the financial hardship process for the program. And the financial hardship process is very similar to SFP and utilizes the same documents and forms. So the first thing that will happen is when district submits a funding application, they will check the box that financial hardship is a request on the 7001. OPSC will notify the district when the 7001 is scheduled to be processed. Then districts will be contacted by the financial hardship team. It is good to note that districts that submit financial hardship documents must do so within 30 days. And because this program moves so quickly, the district must submit those financial hardship documents in that 30-day time period. So financial hardship approval and then the funding application will be processed concurrently. And just a reminder, if the district is planning to use bridge financing, please contact OPSC prior to beginning that process. So the district does not have to have an approved financial hardship review prior to submitting an application during the filing round. And when the application is received requesting financial hardship, the team will notify the financial hardship team that's being requested. Next slide. So for eligibility, there are 4 qualifying criteria for the phase 1 of the financial hardship, and more details will be covered later in this presentation. Next slide. So what happens after the 7001 is submitted? So after it's submitted and the filing round has closed, OPSC staff will begin to review all applicants and all applications that were submitted during that time period. We will validate preference points and determine the funding order of applications and projects. OPSC will contact districts with any questions or concerns or missing information to get anything that we need to correctly and quickly process that application. OPSC staff and the financial hardship staff will also contact the district as needed for documents that are needed for that request. Next slide. So the funding order. So preference points will be used to determine the order in which school districts are funded. Preference points will be given to each approved application up to a maximum of 80 points. So as that follows, there's 40 points that will be given if a school district meets the requirements for a financial hardship grant. Preference points for financial hardship in accordance with statutory clarification to the program will only be provided if the district's financial hardship approval determines that the district is unable to contribute all or a portion of the matching share for the project. No preference points will be provided for financial hardship status if the district has sufficient funds to cover the district share of the first priority project. And then up to 40 points will be given based on the district's percentage of pupils who are eligible for the free and reduced price meals. The percentage will be based on district data and not site-specific data, and you can see the sliding scale here. Next slide. So funding order. So there is a possibility of multiple waves of funding order within each funding round based on the number of applications each school district submits. All approved applications will be funded in the determined order until all funds are exhausted for each round. So the first wave of the funding order is as follows. So school districts will be funded based on the total preference points. If a school district submits multiple applications in the same funding round, OPSC will use the priority number, which is assigned to each application by the school districts in section 4 of the 7001. School districts will have their first priority project funded in order based on total preference points until all school districts have had their first priority project funded. Next slide. School districts with the same total preference points will be funded based on their FRPM percentage, which is reported to 1 decimal place, and those with the higher FRPM percentage will be funded first. If school districts are still tied in preference points and FRPM percentage to 1 decimal, those districts will be placed in a lottery system. Next slide. So a partial funding order. So if the board does not have sufficient funding to fully apportion a school district's project, the school district may elect to do 2 options. One, they can accept the partial funding for the project, and if partial funding is accepted, the apportionment shall become full and final. The district may also decline to accept that funding for the project. And if the partial funding is declined, the board may offer partial funding to the next approved application based on preference point order. If the district declines partial funding, the district may reapply for the following filing round if that is applicable. Next slide. Fund release and reporting. So the fund release process. So school districts who receive new construction or retrofit grants without an advance release of funds must submit a valid fund release authorization form, or the form SAB 7002, with all required approvals within 180 days of apportionment. So school districts who receive new construction or retrofit grants with an advance release of funds must then submit a valid 7002 with all required approvals within 12 months of apportionment. And it's good to know you don't need to submit a 7002 for the release of those advanced funds, only for the full fund release. Because the program is funded from money from the general fund, school districts will not need to participate in the priority funding or the PIF process in order to access program funds. A grant agreement must be submitted prior to the release of any funds. All apportionments will result in cash proceeds being available. Grant agreements must be executed by authorized district representatives. If a valid 7002 is not received within 180 days or 12 months of the apportionment shall be rescinded. It is good to note that districts may now submit these documents on OPSC Online. Next slide. So here is a sample of a program timeline for projects that are not requesting in advance. So first, a school district submits their 7001, OPSC approves the application, and the SAB approves an apportionment. OPSC will create and provide a corresponding grant agreement to be executed and returned concurrently with or prior to submitting a 7001. School districts will then will need to submit a valid 7002. Once those have been submitted and approved by OPSC, all funds will be released to the school district. Again, school districts will have 180 days to complete the entire process from apportionment to fund release. Next slide. So here we have a sample of a project timeline for a project that receives advanced funding. After the funding application is received and approved by OPSC, then the applicant will go to the SAB to receive an approval for apportionment. If the district is requesting an advance for the design of the project and/or site, then they will receive the advanced funds after OPSC receives a valid grant agreement. So for release of advanced funds, again, a 7002 is not required. Once the school district is ready for the full fund release, they must submit a valid 7002 and a revised grant agreement, and their funds will be released. The district must submit a 7002, may submit a 7002 in phases for the release of the remaining funds for either site acquisition and then again for construction, or site and construction, which is the remaining full funding, can be released concurrently. And that can be done with a single 7002 and a corresponding grant agreement for that full fund release. Again, districts will have 1 year or 12 months from the SAB apportionment to request the full fund release. Next slide. Program reporting. So a school district that receives program funding must submit a valid expenditure report with a form SAB 7003 at the completion of the project. Projects will be deemed complete either when the notice of completion for the project has been filed or 1 year from the date of the final fund release, whichever one occurs first. So 2 7003 forms will need to be submitted for a district that has project savings. The first one, the final expenditure report, will be submitted 1 year from the project completion or from final fund release. The second one will be the final savings report, which will be submitted 1 year after the submittal of the expenditure report. Projects will be subject to a local audit conducted to assure that the expenditures incurred by the school district were made in accordance with education code and program regulations. 7003s may also be submitted on OPSC Online. Next slide. Again, here are some links for you, the program website, as well as our OPSC Online system, as well as a link to the PTN generator and tracker. We have program contacts here, myself, Joshua, and then Jason Hernandez, who will be presenting next. So now I'll pass it off to Jason Hernandez, who will go into more detail on the financial hardship process.
Okay, well, thank you, Lindsay. And again, my name is Jason Hernandez. I'm the audit supervisor for the financial hardship program, and we'll be going over a brief overview of the financial hardship and the OPSC online submittal process for the hardship program. Okay. So again, we'll have an overview of the financial hardship process, and then we'll follow that up with going over how to submit the financial hardship phase 1 and phase 2 checklists on OPSC Online. Okay, the financial hardship process. First is the financial hardship submittal, and this is the process and the requirements for determining the district eligibility, known you'll hear often as the phase 1, meeting one of the qualifying criteria. and then the process for determining the district's available contribution. As Lindsay mentioned earlier, it's broken up, and you'll often hear this as phase 1 and phase 2, but it's really all just one process for the hardship approval, and the district has to meet both requirements in order to qualify for financial hardship status. Okay, the submittal process. The districts submit the funding application, like Lindsay mentioned, the SAB form 7001, and they check the box for the financial hardship request. Then at that point, the FDK team or the full day kindergarten team will notify the financial hardship team of which districts are requesting the financial hardship assistance. And then OPC will notify and request documents from the district prior to the district submitting any of the documentation. The district will submit the phase 1 and phase 2 checklists and supporting documents through OPC Online within 30 days of that notification from the financial hardship team that the documents are needed. The financial hardship approval, like Lindsay mentioned this earlier, the financial hardship approval and the funding application is processed concurrently. So we're both working on both sides to get it to the board at the same time. Once the financial hardship review is complete, we'll issue a findings letter to know to the district what findings we found, if the district qualifies or not, and the amount of funding that the district has available. The district then can concur with our findings, and an approval letter will be issued to the district. The district, the way the district concurs with the findings is that they will sign the fund worksheets that were submitted to them and send that back to the OPSC. Once we receive it, then we'll issue the approval letter. Okay, that submittal process. Submittal process is going to be in 2 phases. And OPC Online will be used for the submittal and uploading of any requested backup documentation. So phase 1 is, again, determining the district's eligibility. The COEs automatically qualify, but they still have to submit the phase 1 checklist. Now everything is going to be done through OPC Online, but sometimes it's helpful to have the hard copy of the checklist as you're going through the process of OPC Online. I'll go through that step by step as we move on with the presentation, but there's a link there in case you want that hard copy in front of you. And we'll also send you a hard copy when we send the document request letter. So you'll have opportunity to have the hard copy in front of you as you're going through the OPC Online. And the same thing for the phase 2. The phase 2 determines the amount of district funds that are available for contribution. And there's a link again in case you need that as you're going through that process of answering the questions through OPC Online and submitting the required documentation. And in that phase 2, the available funds, one thing to keep in mind, has 2 components: the amount of funding that we find in your capital project funds and any contribution due to expenditure. And what is the contribution due to expenditure? That's basically any expenditures the district has made on the project prior to applying for financial hardship consideration. One exception to that, Lindsay mentioned it earlier, is if the district requests that bridge financing. Again, if you need to move forward the project for any reason before requesting financial hardship, then we strongly encourage you to request that bridge financing approval through OPSC, and we can walk you through that process once you contact us. Okay, the review process, phase 1. The first thing is, in phase 1, is the district must be levying the maximum developer fee justified under law. And currently, that rate is the 2022 rate, which was approved by the State Allocation Board at their February meeting last year in 2022. So that fee must be in place prior to submitting your documentation. And that was the first thing that we'll look at. So 1, the district is meeting the developer fee requirement, and then they meet one of the following qualifying criteria. The first one being long-term debt of 60% or more of their total bonding capacity. We use documents such as the district's audited financial statements. We get the most current assessed evaluation from your county audit controller. We'll use that to calculate your total bonding capacity. and then to check it against any capital facility related long-term debt you have to see whether you're above or below that 6% threshold. A district may have had a successful voter bond, a Prop 39 bond within the last 2 years. If so, then those proceeds from the bond should have been used on school facility program projects. And if it meets that, then that's another way that they can qualify. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if it's a county office of education, then they automatically meet the qualifying criteria under the phase 1 review. And for smaller districts, if their total bonding capacity is 5 million or less, and again, we're just looking at the district's assessed evaluation, their most recent one that's submitted, to calculate that total bonding capacity to find out if it's 5 million below or above that 5 million threshold. Oh, one thing I want to mention real quick too, if you're familiar with the school facility program and applying for hardship, there's an option in the law to come in under other evidence as approved by the state allocation board, but that option is not available under the under FDK. If you're applying for the full day kindergarten program, then you have to meet one of these qualifying criteria. Okay, the phase 2 review process. Basically, we're reviewing your capital facility related funds to determine the amount of available funds you have to contribute to your project. These facility related funds are typically your capital project funds, which are your funds 21 through 50. Fund 21 is typically your building fund, where we'll typically find the local school bond proceeds in that fund 21. Your fund 25, where your developer fees are deposited. Looking at your fund 35, where any previous school facility funding is deposited in that county school facilities fund, or your fund 40, which is kind of the other for capital facility related funding. So we'll look through those funds to see what funding that potentially is available. We'll look at any revenues and expenditures up to the past 3 years, and we'll review any transfers in or out of the facility funds, because we're really looking to see, even if money moves out of one of these funds into another fund, such as maybe back to your general fund, your fund 1, we still want to see whether or not these funds are potentially eligible or not. We may examine any special reserve funds for availability, or if the district has indicated, or the CO has indicated that these funds are reserved for a specific purpose, and we'll make sure that we verify that those funds as well. Available funds may be reduced by any eligible encumbrances that are backed up by contractual obligations to the district. If the district is submitting any eligible encumbrances, then they must submit an encumbrance schedule that details all the requested encumbrances. And I'll go over a little more detail on that slide, but it'll basically list all your encumbrances regardless of which fund. If you have multiple encumbrances in multiple funds, this is basically kind of a cover schedule that lists all of them all in one place. And then we'll also look at any unsold bonds that may be available unless the district is unable to sell them. Meaning you may have a $20 million bond, you've sold $15 million to date, and we see that there's $5 million unsold, but you're unable to do that because you've reached the tax threshold in these Prop 39 bond, for example. If it's a non-unified district, you've reached that tax threshold of $30 for every 100,000 of assessed evaluation. That's all we need to know. Then we know that that additional 5 million is not available, but we'll be looking at that as well. Okay, so I mentioned the encumbrance schedule. And this is one thing that will be filled out by the district. We can provide a copy of that for you once you start the process. You can contact us ahead of time, or if you know, as we go through OPC Online and you submit your phase 1 and phase 2, you upload all the documents, but you don't have a copy of this, then we can get that to you. But basically, we want this to mirror all the encumbrances that you have listed in your fund worksheet. So for example, this district may have listed 796,000 in their fund 25 encumbrance. And in this case, it was just for one vendor, for Bell Roof Company. They list the contract date, the contract amount, what's been expended to date on the contract, and the remaining encumbrance. Basically, that column E is the current encumbrance that you're requesting. And so everything there in blue, A through E, is filled out by the district. Then once we receive that documentation, we'll add what we determine to be the audited eligible encumbrance amount in column F, and then we'll add any comments in there as well, or the district can use that column to add comments to let us know anything specific. But again, if you had some money, an encumbrance in, say, for example, Fund 21, you see those additional encumbrances totaling 4.2 million, what we found eligible. And so each one of these subtotals, that subtotal, the first one is 796, the middle one of 4.2 million, and the last one of 243,000. Those should foot back to the totals that you have listed in your fund worksheet. In a subsequent slide, I'll go over, some of the tips and some of the issues that we encountered, and hopefully this will help out on both sides, make it easier for the district to make sure that, as a reminder, that have I listed all my requested encumbrances? Am I leaving anything out? Do I have the backup documentation? And then this gives staff something a starting point to look at. What should we look for? I should be looking for all these contracts listed on here to make sure that you have a complete package. So hopefully it's something that will help out both sides, both the district and the Office of Public School Construction, and hopefully make it a little more smoother process. But this basically will be required if the district is requesting any encumbrances. Okay, the review process, the funding. If the district's financial hardship need is greater than the available funds, then the district qualifies and the state will be funded the difference between the district's financial hardship need and the available funds. And again, it's important to remember, and I think there was some misconception out there previously, that the phase 1 and phase 2 is not two separate things. You don't meet financial hardship status by meeting one of the criteria in phase 1. We broke that up to make it a little easier, hopefully, for the districts when they submit, and for the whole processing process, but it's just really one process. You have to meet both things. You have to meet one of the qualifying criteria, have your developer fees in place, and your need has to be greater than the available funds. And all that, if you meet both sides, then you can qualify for financial hardship status. If you meet one and not the other, then you will not qualify. So that's an important distinction to remember. COEs or districts may request advanced funding for site and design, as was mentioned previously, prior to requesting your full funding for the FDK projects. And you do not have to be financial hardship. If you're used to the school facility program, in that program, you have to be financial hardship to get these advanced funding. But in FDK, as was mentioned earlier by Lindsay, you do not necessarily have to be financial hardship. Anyone can request the advanced funding. Okay, the financial hardship approval is valid for 6 months from the date of approval. So if you have multiple projects or even projects outside the FDK program, you also have some school facility programs at the same time, it would only require one financial approval if all your projects were going to come in within that 6-month approval period. Okay, some benchmark dates. The funding round is going to end approximately on March 2nd, 2023. And so then that following week, then the financial hardship team will gather all the projects that requested the financial hardship when they submitted their funding application on the 7001. And then we will request the financial hardship documents. We'll send out basically the request for the information on the phase 1 and phase 2 hardship districts. Those documents again will be due within 30 days. So approximately that week of April 10th, 2023, those documents will be due and submitted through OPC online. And then the following week, the hardship team will start their reviews to make sure we'll basically be doing a preliminary review to make sure all the packages that come in are complete. If anything is missing, if there's documents missing, then we will send a 5-day letter out to the district requesting the missing documentation. If after the 5 days the documents are still missing, the financial request will be basically sent back to the district as incomplete, and they will be given the option to continue processing their application as a non-financial hardship district. Okay, some top tips. Going through the last round, there are some things that came up that hopefully will make it easier for the district and easier for your financial hardship request to be processed. And one thing the district can do, and we'll also be doing on our end when they first come in, is you can review the amount of district available funds that you have listed on your fund worksheets. And if that amount exceeds the district's financial hardship need or basically their share of the project, then you may consider applying as a non-financial hardship project. You want to ensure that your phase 1 and phase 2 checklist document package is complete. Again, like I mentioned, that any incomplete packages after the 5-day request will be returned to the district and not processed. And what were some examples of missing documentation that we encountered in the last round? Some of them were missing the fund worksheets. This is one of the basic documents that we need in order to do the financial hardship review, and that's a fund worksheet for each one of your capital project funds. Again, a fund worksheet for Fund 21, for your building fund if you have any bond revenue, a fund worksheet for Fund 25 if you have any developer fee revenue or expenditures out of that fund. So we just need that basic information for all your capital project funds the district may have. General ledger detail reports. I mentioned earlier we may be looking at potentially up to 3 years of fiscal information, and there was times where maybe we had 1 year of the general ledger detail report, but we were missing the subsequent year. Because when you submit, if you're coming in right now, the audited financial statements for June 30th, 2022 may not be available. So you may be submitting as part of that package or we may already have, if you submitted previously, the June 30th, 2021. And then you'll be submitting a general ledger detail report for the year ending in 6/30/2022. And then the second general ledger detail report to take you from July 1st of 2022 to the current date, whenever you submit. That's April 1st of 2023. Then that last general ledger report should take us through that April date. So there was times where we had one report, but we're missing the other. So you just want to make sure that you have all the general ledger detail reports that you need for all the capital project funds that the district may have. Make sure that you have the current school board resolution for your developer fees. That it's not a school board resolution that was approving the fees. For example, one that we saw was from 2018. I mentioned earlier that the state allocation board passed their most recent level 1 developer fees in February of 2022. So you want to make sure that you have a school board resolution that's adopting those most current fees. You should have an expenditure report for expenditures made to date on your FDK project, or a letter stating that no expenditures have been made to date. And that helps to calculate part of the available funds, or if there's any contribution that we need to reduce the hardship apportionment by. And to make sure that we have the most current assessed evaluation from your county audit controller. And that's released each year in August. So the most current one should be August of 2022. As long as we have that, then we can use that when we're calculating your phase 1, or we're calculating your total bonding capacity. And we need the most current information in order to do that. And then we should have a copy of the signed contracts for all your requested encumbrances. And hopefully, again, that schedule that we showed you earlier should make it easier. And at least that's one place to start off, to list all the vendors and the contracts. And we should have copies and signed copies of all those requested encumbrances. And then again, just to use that encumbrance schedule to report all of them, the totals in each one of each fund should match the schedule. You have 450,000 listed on that schedule for contracts in Fund 25. You look over onto your fund worksheet for Fund 25, it should match. It should foot and trace back to that total. So hopefully that'll make it a little easier to make sure that you've reported everything that you're requesting. You can almost use that schedule as a cover for all the backup contracts will be behind it. And hopefully it'll make a little more smoother process to make sure and eliminate some of that back and forth that we have to go through sometimes if we can't come back to the totals that the district has listed in there. So hopefully I'll make it a little easier for each side and make that process a little bit smoother as well. Okay, submitting the financial hardship phase 1 and phase 2 checklist using OPC Online. OPC Online supports that submission, again, of both your financial hardship phase 1 and phase 2 required documents. And that's for either if you're doing, today we're talking about submitting that for the full day kindergarten, but if you also had school facility program projects, you can use OPS Online as well. It's the preferred method of submission as well as the simplest. It does not require the district to prepare or sign a letter and send that into the office. Again, like Lindsay mentioned, the district representative or superintendent must be logged in to submit the request, and the district must have been contacted by OPC prior to going in and submitting your phase 1 and phase 2 checklist. Okay, Lindsay mentioned the various ways that you can get to the link and log into OPC Online. Once you get in to the field that you can input your information to log in, you go ahead and log in and sign in. And when you do that, it'll take you to this main funding application dashboard. And then you're just going to want to scroll at the top right. You'll see the tab for district, and go ahead and click on that district tab once you're in there. And then this screen will pop up, and you can select your district. You can just start typing, and as you're typing, your district will pop up. So for example, I typed in Robla, and then once I do that, it narrows it down to the one, and the district will pop up. And then you can click anywhere on that line where it has the district's code and the district's name to start the process at that point. So you can go ahead and click on that. And the district's dashboard will pop up at this point. You have some of your basic information. You have a tab for eligibility to manage your sites, which list all the sites, your district contacts, notes, district uploaded documents, and then finally the one that you're looking for, the tab for financial hardship. So you can go ahead and click on that financial hardship tab. And then once you do that, some tables will pop up. And the first table is financial hardship requests in progress. So if you had a previous request that was in progress, or if you're updating a previous request, you'll see that information there. In this case, there's been nothing submitted, so you just see a blank table down below with the headers. So to start that process, you go ahead and on the right-hand side there, click on that new financial hardship request. Once you do that, this will pop up, and this is so you can create a new financial hardship phase 1 application. You'll see that your district information is automatically populated along with the phase. It'll start off with the phase 1 information. So they'll be listed there, and then it'll ask you to enter an application nickname. When you're doing that, you just want to try to make it as detailed as possible. So you know, and so OPC knows when they're reviewing it what specific this was for. So in this case, I just labeled it the district's name, phase 1 financial hardship checklist 2023. And so once you come up with a nickname, then you go ahead and just hit the continue button. And then this little message will pop up to let you know that you're ready to start the process. It'll say that this is the financial hardship checklist, phase 1. It'll give you some brief information and instruction. And then once you're ready to go, you can hit that start application. Okay, so you hit the start application. So it's going to pop in to the first part of the wizard and start asking the questions. You can kind of see off to the left there, there's a checklist. It starts off, this section is labeled the County Office of Education. Then we go into section A, questions from the phase 1 checklist, section B from the phase 1 checklist. It'll give you an option to review the information that you've inputted. And then finally, you'll go into when you're ready to submit. So the first thing is the County Office of Education. So we're gonna, first of all, even before we answer yes or no to that question, you want it to check the box if this is a new or a renewal financial hardship request. New meaning that you have not applied for hardship within the last 3 years. So you can go ahead and click new or renewal, and then just answer the question whether it is the County Office of Education or not. For this example, I hit no, and then at that point, I'm ready to hit continue. Okay, so you hit continue, and it pops you into section A, and it start walking you through the questions. And you'll see off to the left there, the dot, it's already in section A, and it has the check box to show you that you've finished answering the first section. So it's walking you through the exact same questions that you will see in the paper copy. That's why I found when I was going through here a couple times that it made it easier to have the paper copy in front of me. But either way, it's the same questions, and it will walk you through it. Section A, the first thing is asking you about the developer fees. Is the district levying the fees at the maximum rate justified under law? It's talking about the level 1 fees at that point. So the yes or no. Is the district requesting financial hardship status for a new construction project? And that question's there to find out whether or not the district needs to be leveling level 2, because if it's a renewal and the district is requesting hardship, then there's some additional questions that will pop up to see whether or not the district should be or should not have to be levying level 2 developer fees. And then it will ask, is a copy of the school board resolution implementing the fees, yes or no? And then there's a question about, is the district sharing? And you can answer either yes, no, or NA. And if the district is not levying the maximum developer fees, it's asking, does the district have a current justification study that's showing a lesser amount? If the district does have that, then they still meet the developer fee requirement, even though it's a lesser fee that's currently approved by the state allocation board. So you can answer all those questions, and once you answer those, you can go ahead and hit continue, and then it takes you into section B. And section B is just basically answering the questions about the qualifying criteria and what criteria the district is coming in. So in this example, if you hit yes for the first question, which is the district's current outstanding bonded indebtedness at least 60% of their total bonding capacity? I hit yes, and then these messages or this additional information pops up. It's asking you, what is that percentage? Do you have a letter from the county audit controller certifying your current assessed evaluation? It will ask for a copy of the appropriate bond books, certificate of participation books, or any other documentation that verifies the district's level of bonded indebtedness, and asking if we have the most recent copy of the district's annual audit report. And again, if you're coming in right now, it's more than likely being the one ending 6/30/21, because the 6/30/22 is not available until it's certified by the state controller's office. And then it'll ask you some other questions. If you're coming in under the other criteria, question number 2 is, have you passed a Prop 39 bond within the last 3 years? Or if you're a smaller school district and your total bonding capacity is less than 5 million, that's question number 3. You can go and hit that. You'll see the question number 4 is the district submitting under other evidence. And again, this the wizard in the OPC Online is set up for if you're applying for hardship under the school facility program, or if you're applying for hardship under the full day kindergarten program. But again, remember, if you're applying under full day kindergarten, even though that question number 4 or option is sitting there, it's not an option to qualify under this particular program. So once you answer the information for the criteria, you can go ahead and hit continue. And then you'll have an option to review your information. So you can go through there, scroll through there. The first section, the county office, section A about the developer fees, section B about your qualifying criteria. In this case, I left off some information. I didn't answer it, and it'll pop up and it'll show in red as required. So it's not going to let you move forward. So what you can do then at that point is scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see at the bottom there's a button for to edit the page. And so if you need to go back and you miss some information or you need to change anything, you can hit that edit button and it'll take you back. So in this case, it's giving me, this is the information that I'm missing. And it'll let you know which fields are required, which questions you may have missed. You'll see that in red. So I went back through, I answered it, I filled in the district's indebtedness percentage. I answer the questions, a yes or no, as far as the information, if I had that information available. And then I could scroll and hit continue. And then once you do, it takes you back into the review section. And in this case, you can see now the information there is filled out. It has the answer to the questions. It has my percentage of indebtedness listed on there. So it has all the required information. I don't see that message in red of required information. So once everything looks okay, I've had my chance to review it. Then you can go down to the bottom, past the edit button, and go down and hit continue. Once you do that, it's going to take you into the submit section. And in here, you can click on the first box, and that's basically going to say that I have uploaded all the required documents. And to upload any documents at this point, you can go ahead and hit that upload file button. So if I hit that, for example, then this will pop up. And this will be my chance to upload any files. So in this case, I searched and I pulled out I wanted to get the assessed evaluation information. So I'm going to upload the financial hardship checklist. There's a drop-down menu for the document type. So I selected assessed evaluation. You can type in your own description. In this case, I just said assessed evaluation. And once I had it on there, then I was ready to hit upload. If you made a mistake and you did the wrong documentation, you can see there in red, it has the word remove. You can go in there and take that out and start again. But when you are ready, you can go ahead and hit upload files. And then once you do that, you should get a message saying that you've successfully uploaded the documentation. And you can keep on uploading as many documents as you need. And when you have all those phase 1 documents uploaded, you can go in and hit the done button. And then, okay, so then you uploaded those documents. So now you just need to fill out the preparer's information. In order to do that, those boxes are grayed out until you hit that checkbox. And once you hit that you're certifying that you're the superintendent or the authorized district representative, then you're able to fill out that information. And so we fill out the information, the preparer's tile, preparer's name and contact information, the district representative and their contact information, and then the email address. So once you have all that information in there, then you can go ahead and hit the green button at the bottom, the submit the paperless application. And once you do that, then you should get a message. If everything worked out okay, it should say at the top that this paperless request for financial hardship eligibility determination was successfully submitted to OPSC. If you had any remaining files, you can see in the bottom right there, that first arrow, you can still upload any remaining files. If you wanted to download for your own internal records, a copy of the phase 1 checklist that you went through with the wizard, you can click that button and then there'll be a copy of that phase 1 checklist that you will be able to download. And so if everything looks okay, you can go ahead and click and go to the financial hardship dashboard. That will take you back to the district's dashboard. At that point, you'll see that tile on the left that says phase 1, and it'll give you the description and the status for that phase 1 checklist, and it's submitted. And you can see it down below there, the version 1, the status is submitted, the receive date, who submitted it, and if anything was updated. If it wasn't, it's going to give you the same date as the receive date. And so it looks like you have everything ready to go, and now you're ready to submit your phase 2 application. So you can click right there in the tile down below. It says phase 2, and it has create the phase 2 checklist. So you go ahead and click on that. And then the next screen will pop up. And again, it'll have the district's information automatically populated, the district code and the district's name, and then the financial hardship phase. That will auto-populate for the financial hardship phase 2. And then again, you just have to enter a nickname, as we did for the phase 1 checklist. In this case, I did the same thing. I named the district's name, phase 2 financial hardship checklist 2023, just so I know when I was submitting, in case there's multiple requests the district has submitted in the past. And then when I'm ready, I just go ahead and hit that create checklist button. And then this will pop up, and you'll see there in that tile, it says phase 2 draft. And so then at that point, all click on the tile, and then once I do that, the draft will pop up. You'll see there that the name is draft number 1, the status is draft, and again, that same information, who it was created by, and the uploaded date. So then at that point, I can click anywhere on that line. And so I'll click right there where it says draft number 1. And once I do that, it'll take me into the wizard for the phase 2 checklist. Again, you can kind of see to the right where you are. It has the different categories from the phase 2 checklist. First, the funding sources, then the evidence required is the second section. Then again, it'll give you the option to review the information for the phase 2 checklist. And then finally, you'll be able to submit the phase 2 information the way you did for the phase 1. The first thing it's going to ask you, the same thing it did with the phase 1, is this a new request or a renewal? So you go ahead and click that, and then it starts walking you through some of the information for the funding sources. And it's that same funding sources that you've seen in the paper copy. Has the district issued any certificates of participation, any general obligation bonds, any developer fee in lieu agreements, some of the basic information. So it's you're answering yes or no. If you answer yes to any of them, then additional information will pop up. For example, I hit yes to question C. Has the district passed any general obligation bonds within the last 3 years? So I hit yes. And in this case, it'll pop up and it'll give you a chance to enter information for the current year, the prior year, or 2 prior years. So it'll ask you for the year that the bond was passed and the amount. It'll ask you to indicate what fund those bond proceeds were deposited into. Were they deposited into Fund 21 or some other fund? And then asking to make sure, or as a reminder, that you submit a trial balance or a general ledger report detailing and showing where those funds were deposited. And then a reminder too, also to provide a copy of that bond booklet and an official copy of the ballot issue as part of the financial hardship package. Okay, so in this case, for my example, I just had one bond that was prior year in 2022 for $10 million. I deposit those funds into Fund 21 and then indicated that I'd enclosed the documentation. And then a little reminder there, if that additional documentation, such as the bond booklet and official copy of the ballot issue, is not submitted, then the package will be returned. Okay. And then again, as you go through all the questions, if you answer yes to any of them, something will pop up. Just for example, I answered question H with a yes. Has the district made any interfund transfers in and out of a fund which contain capital facility related proceeds? I hit yes. And this is going to ask you to include a schedule of those transfers that show the fund it was transferred from, the fund it was going to, and describe the purpose of the transfer and the date of the transfer. And then once you have all that information, go ahead and hit continue, and it'll take you in the next section under evidence required. And that kind of walks you through all the information that's needed. Some of the basic information like a summary of why the district is requesting financial hardship, the district's capital outlay plan for the next 5 years, if it's available or not, a project worksheet for each one of the projects that you're requesting. If you're only requesting one project, having that one project worksheet. And then one of the most important things under D, that you submitted a financial hardship fund worksheet for each fund that you have within your capital project funds, any capital facility related funding. And let's kind of walk you through all those questions. You've answered the questions, you've gone down through there, and you're ready to hit continue. Once you hit continue, just like in the phase 1, you're able to see all your questions and make sure you answered all of them. There wasn't anything missing that will pop up in red as required. In this case, we answered all the questions. If you needed to, you could always hit edit page and go back to change any of your answers, or if there was missing information that you need to add to the wizard, you can hit the edit page. And if everything looks good, you can go ahead and hit continue. And then it's going to take you to a similar submittal page. Again, you have to hit the checkbox, and then this will be your opportunity to upload those phase 2 documents. Again, you go through the same process. You pick out the files that you need. You can upload them one by one, and you should get a message again that you've successfully updated it. Again, you'll have that drop-down menu to pick out what document it is. In this case, I picked the audit. You can't see the whole thing, but it says audited financial statements. And then under description, I wrote the 2021 audited financial statements. And so you can upload additional documents. There's a lot more documents. The phase 2 is where the bulk of the information comes from as you're going through the financial hardship process. So all those can be uploaded here. And then once you're done with all the documents, you can go and hit that same button, the done button, and it'll take you back here. And then you're just going to have to check the box again to enter, even though the information was entered previously under phase 1, you'll have to go through there again and enter the information for who is doing the information. You'll fill out the preparer's name, their contact information, the district representative or superintendent and their contact information. And then once you do that, then you're ready to submit your paperless application. Okay, you'll go ahead and hit that. And you can see then on the left-hand side, you're under that submittal. You should have that message if everything went okay, that this paperless request for hardship eligibility determination was successfully submitted to OPSC. It'll tell you the package request number. Again, for this sample, this is the first one. So you'll see package request number 1. But if you had submitted previous ones under this system, then you'll see that it's the second request or the third request, and then the date of the submittal, and then all the contact information. Again, you'll have an option to upload any remaining files. If you want to make sure that you have all the requested documentation, one thing you can do is click on where it says review required documents. If you do that, then a Word document will pop up and it'll list all the typical documentation. You don't necessarily need every single one of it, depending on what's applicable to your particular district or county office of education. But at least this will give you kind of a sheet you can look at to let you know what all the typical required documentation is, who it's required for, and a brief comment describing that information. So you can look at that at any time too to make sure you have all the documents were submitted and uploaded. And if not, once this gets assigned to staff, again, we'll be doing a preliminary review to make sure that all the required documents were submitted. If not, then we'll send you that document request letter, that 5-day letter listing what was still missing from the package, and working with you at that point to get the information on time. And if not, then the package will be returned. The district will have the option to be processed as a non-financial hardship district. Okay, you can get you can download a copy of the phase 2 checklist that you submitted if you need that for the district's records. When you're completely done with that, you can go ahead and click and go to the financial hardship dashboard. That will take you back here, and you can see now that phase 2 is listed as submitted. So now everything is submitted and is ready for review at this point. So once we see that both phase 1 and phase 2 is submitted, then it will go onto the financial hardship team's workload. And at that point, someone will do the preliminary review to make sure that all requested documentation are submitted, and you should get a preliminary review letter sent to the district, either letting you know everything was complete, and we will start the process and contact you if we need any additional information from the district, or if something is still incomplete and requesting those documents to be submitted within 5 days. Or that letter may even state that it appears, based on the information submitted by the district, at least without doing the full review, the district may have more funding than their financial hardship need, and asking if the district still wants to move forward and still wants OPSC to do the full complete financial hardship review. So you should get at least one of those 3 letters for all the packages that are and the requests that are submitted to OPSC. Okay. It's always the OPSC has all their training posted under the virtual training series. If you need to go back, or someone on your staff wasn't available today to review it, As Barbara had mentioned earlier, these will be later, these are being recorded and will be posted to the website, and you can look at it under our virtual training series. You can go onto OPSC's YouTube site, and all the previous training will be posted there. You can see like the first one there was a K-12 school facility program audit overview that we had done, and that's posted there. So all the previous trainings should be there. This will eventually be posted there. You can go back and review this at any time. If you have any questions, or if there's something else you want to go back and review, you can look at that, or even to help you, the slides help you as you're going through the first time to work through OPC Online and submitting your phase 1 and phase 2 checklist that way. But if you have any questions, you can contact us at any time, even if you need us to kind of help walk you through anything, or if there's anything that's popping up or giving you a message you're not quite understanding, you can contact Daniel Flanagan from the Financial Hardship team. My contact information is on there. Also, Suzanne Reese, our operations manager for fiscal services, and any of us will be happy to help walk you through at any time, or if we need to set up a separate one-on-one meeting to kind of answer any questions, or again, help you walk through anything, that we're more than happy to help you do that. We want to make this process as easy as possible for the district, and hopefully make it an accessible process for the district as well. Okay. And now I think we'll go through any question and answers for either my part or Lindsay's part.
Well, thank you guys very much. For those that have some questions, please use your raised hand at the bottom of your screen, and we'll turn it over to the respective area for answering. Currently, we have 2 questions for financial hardship. The first one is, several districts are reporting that funds found in their capital accounts are from local general obligation bond collections that in some cases occurred a number of years ago. The districts are reporting that the bond language as such does not allow for the construction of TK or pre-K classrooms, or the bond language is very specific in what projects it does cover. So the question is, how would the Financial Hardship Division treat such funds as it relates to a district's match for the preschool TK program?
We treat the same way as we would for any financial hardship review. One of the things that I mentioned earlier in the presentation was that we look at any funds that are reserved for a special purpose. So if those funds in Fund 21 in your building fund are older local bond funds that are reserved for a specific purpose, then you need to indicate. So when you submit, so part of the documentation you may submit is submitting some of that original voter language from the ballot measure. This specifically lays out the specific purpose, because we've seen those bond measures both ways. That sometimes they are very specific. These for specific sites or for these specific purposes. Maybe it's to upgrade all the technology within the district, or there's certain specific items that's listed on those bond measures. Other times they're not as specific. So it depends. We have to look at the specific bond measures and review that documentation to see specifically what's listed on there and make that determination of whether or not those funds are available or not. Just because they're listed in there, if we don't have any information, then we're just going to by default say that those funds are available. But then the district will have that opportunity to provide that. Once we send our findings to the district, they have that opportunity at that point to say, hey, no, wait a minute. These funds are only can be used legally at these school sites over here. And it specifically said that in the bond measure. You can go ahead and submit a copy of that bond measure to us. We don't already have it on file, and we'll review that. And if it turns out that's what it is, then we'll make that adjustment. And then there's a column, if you're familiar with the fund worksheets, there's a column, I believe it's column 5, where we make our adjustments and we'll back that money out if part of it or all of it is reserved for that specific purpose.
Perfect. So one more question, kind of along the similar line here. The district reports that funds found in their capital accounts are from reimbursements from SFP projects that were submitted a number of years ago. So how would the financial hardship team treat such reimbursements as it's related to the district's match for the preschool TK program?
Well, those reimbursements potentially are available. It depends on a couple factors. If you look in the school facility program regulations, if, for example, if you used local bonds to move forward those projects, those older school facility program projects in the first place, it gives you the options of what to do once you receive that reimbursement from the state. One, you can move it back into the building fund, into Fund 21, to reimburse those funds. If the district has completed those projects and they no longer have to do that, then they can use those funds to basically pay down the debt. Move it into one of your funds where you pay that out, such as Fund 50, to prepay some of those bond payments. Or the third one that you'll see in there is the district is free to use it on any high priority capital outlay that the district may have. Now that and often it falls under that third category. If it does fall under that third category, then it's kind of like any other funding that you have in there. If it's sitting there and it's available for any high priority capital outlay, well, your new full day kindergarten project is a capital outlay project, and so it could potentially be available. And a lot of it depends on if those funds are encumbered or not for a specific purpose. But at that point, once that's funds that's used for higher priority capital outlay, then it's potentially available. Again, it may be reserved for a specific purpose, but it is potentially something that we'll look at that point.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, if anybody has any questions they would like to ask, please feel free to use the raised hand feature. That should be located depending on whether you're using a mobile or a PC application or web browser. It may be on the bottom of the screen or the top. While we are waiting for raised hands, there were some questions, and definitely appreciate the interaction from many of the attendees via the Q&A chat option. One specific question I wanted to go ahead and reiterate here was whether or not the equipment can be used for transitional kindergarten application funding. Yes, that is an eligible expenditure. However, there must be a classroom portion to the project in order to be an eligible project for funding. But yes, playground equipment is an eligible expenditure.
So it looks like we have a few raised hands. See Tom Silva? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
All righty. Thank you very much. I believe this is already answered. I just want to clarify just to make sure, because I might have missed it. If a district has not passed a GO bond, whether it's Prop 39 or a regular GO bond, and sometimes we have some districts whose boards will never put a bond on the ballot, then my understanding is that they will not qualify for financial hardship. Is that a true statement?
Potentially, that would make it more difficult to qualify for hardship, because you wouldn't meet the one criteria you passed the bond within the last 2 years. If it's a district with a smaller bonding capacity, they can still qualify without having any bonded indebtedness, as long as their total bonding capacity is less than 5 million. So they can qualify for smaller districts, they can qualify that way. The other way is if your total bonded indebtedness is 60% or greater of your total bonding capacity. Typically, a big chunk of that comes from local bond measures. But even if they haven't passed a local bond measure, I've seen some districts in the past, if they've qualified because they've had a large amount of COPs, which are the certificates of participation. So if they have something along those lines, potentially things like lease agreements, those are not going to count towards that 6% bonding capacity. So that would make it more difficult. to qualify, but not impossible depending on what other type of capital facility related debt the district had. You know, if they had some questions even before they apply, you know, we could talk that over with them ahead of time if they had some questions. Again, I mentioned earlier under this program, under the full day kindergarten program, there's not that option to submit under other evidence. If they were coming in just for under the school facility program, they may qualify on that route if they didn't have any local bond, but that's not available under this program. So while not possible, we'll still look at what other long-term debt the district may have, but unless they have, it's a smaller district with a total bond capacity less than 5 million, they have some other type of capital facility related debt, long-term debt, such as certificates of participation, something to take you over that 60% threshold. Yeah, it'd be, well, not impossible, it would be more difficult without any local bonds.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Juanita Orta. Looks like you're still on mute. Juanita? Okay, we can come back to you. Greg Norman?
Hey, Lindsay, good morning.
Hi.
Hi. Question as to what constitutes contract. And what I'm leading to is that a lot of districts will have their Board of Education approve their facility master plan. And that master plan may constitute a variety of different projects. And say, for example, the master plan constitutes $300 million of projected projects. Would that constitute a contract if a Board of Education approves a facility master plan? And along those same lines, we have seen a lot of boards that will approve a need for a new, let's say, elementary school, and they will stipulate that funds in their building accounts, their capital accounts, will be designated in order to do as such, but they may not have contracted with a specific vendor, but they have set aside those funds in their capital accounts, either for their facility master plan or a specific capital project. Would that constitute a contract?
No, I'll answer that question, Lizzie. No, unfortunately, that would not constitute a legal obligation at that point. A master plan is basically what the district hopes to do, what they want to do, and they're planning for the future, but they're not legally obligated at that point to spend, like your example, you had the 300 million, they're not legally obligated at that point to spend any of that money. That's their wish list, basically, and what they want to do and what they need to do. But they're not legally obligated at that point. So we're looking at what is their available funds at the point of time when they come in for the financial hardship. What do they have legally obligated to them at that point? So if there was a master plan approved by the school board, or if there was a need that was passed by the board that they wanted to do this future project, until any of those projects get under contract, we can't accept those as eligible encumbrances. We just look at what is a legal obligation at the time when the district submits. And one thing to also keep in mind for districts too, there's a little more flexibility when you're coming in for your initial. If you're coming in for renewal, there's no new contracts, regardless if you had a legal contract signed. If you're still within the hardship umbrella, you're within the 3-year window, then we look back to see what contracts and what expenditures and encumbrances were made in that initial approval and what did we approve at that initial approval. And the only contracts at that point that we will approve is anything that was approved at that initial approval. And that's listed right there in 1859.81, the first paragraph. It ends saying that no new encumbrances or expenditures will be allowed after that initial approval. But yeah, it has to be a legally signed contract in order for us to not count any of the funding as potentially available if you're coming in for the program.
Thank you, Jason.
See, I don't see any other raised hands.
Going once.
Yeah, anything else? If we haven't gotten to your question or you have another question that comes up later, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or my team or Jason or his team. We're always available to help walk anyone through as needed. As for that, we can hang out until noon and answer questions as they come up. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance.
Yes, thank you.
Tom, Sylvia, you had another question?
Okay, and it was just, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, cool. The chat box and questions had a lot of really good back and forth. Is there a way that we could either download that or print that, or could you make that available to all of us?
Yes, we will be working on providing a questions and answers that were provided during this webinar, and they will be posted to our website.
Cool, thank you. This has been very, very helpful, by the way. And thank you very much to all of you.
Of course, thank you.
We have one question in the chat. It's for Jason's group. If a district is financial hardship approved, is the letter of SAB approved sufficient information? Not quite sure.
If I think I saw it, is it district is a financial hardship?
Approved.
So they have approval letter.
I'm not sure if they're getting at the fact that, you know, once the financial hardship team does its review, your team will be sending a letter, a findings letter. And if the district agrees with that findings letter, then they will receive I can't say it. After the fact, they will receive a letter of approval from your team, and that
Correct.
will complete.
Yeah, that completes the hardship cycle. And if I guess another way I could look at it is if they were saying they had a current hardship approval, would they need to show that the previous project was SAB approved? They're coming in for a new one. One of the things we'll check for, I'm not sure if that's what the person was asking, but one of the things we will check when those requests first come in is even before we send out a document request letter, we'll check to see if the district has current financial hardship approval or not. And we'll also check to see if we have any previous documentation on file that we can use as well. And we'll adapt the documents that we're asking for at that point as well. So I'm not sure if that answers that question, but you can always contact myself or Sue or Dan Flanagan if we didn't answer your question.
And then one more question regarding, and I'm assuming this is regarding funds that we might consider available. This person is using grants such as ELOP. Not sure what that is.
I would have to look. We'd have to look at see what those grants are specifically. I don't know offhand exactly what that is either. If they had funds for another funding source such as that, and we were not familiar with that, we would definitely reach out to the district to request some additional information. And one of the things we'd be checking for is to see if are those funds reserved for a specific purpose, especially if it's maybe one we haven't encountered yet or we're not totally familiar with. We'll definitely contact the district at that point to see what it is, to see if those funds, you know, the other person asked the question about the local bond funds. And if it's a funding source that we haven't looked at before, one of the things we'll definitely check to see is, are those funds reserved for a specific purpose or not? So they're not automatically just going to be available because they're sitting in one of your capital project funds. And if we don't see, sometimes we may not even see that. We're just looking at, we see your general ledger and your audited financial statements, and we're looking at that number as a totality. You still have that option to tell us, hey, you know, a portion of that 200,000 is this 100,000 for this other funding source and it's not available. And then you'll have that opportunity to submit that additional information that we can look at and say, oh, you're right. We need to make that adjustment. And that fund's going to be adjusted from 200,000 down to 100,000 based on what that is. So, but we'll definitely look at anything that's capital facility related, but it does not necessarily mean that it will be available. You know, we'll follow up with you to see if those funds are reserved for a specific purpose or not.
Looks like we have one more question from Greg.
Hey, Jason, a nuance to the previous question, and that is one of our districts called and wanted to know if there was bonding authorization available, and the Board of Education said we will only sell bonds for XYZ project. Would those funds be restricted as it relates to the preschool TKK program?
So they have some additional bonding authority that's not sold yet. They're not at the tax threshold, but they want to reserve it for a specific purpose. We probably more likely would have to look at the original bond language, like I described earlier, the bond voter information, the original voter pamphlet, and the official language of the bond to see specifically what type of projects were listed for that bond, because it may come down to the question is whether or not those funds are reserved or restricted for those sites that the school board is wanting to reserve it for. If it's more open, then potentially those funds may be available, Greg. I think we would have to go back and look to see what the language of the bond specifically says.
I think the district is, I think what they're asking for, is it the board that determines what the priority project is, or will it be the fact that they submitted an application for the preschool TKK? The example is, say, for example, the community needs a NPR or gymnasium. There's some bonding authority that is available. And so the community wants the gymnasium NPR, the board approves it for that. It shows up in the capital account. But now the OPSC is saying that those funds need to be spent on the PSTKK project versus what the board and the community desires.
Right. And that may be one we may have to look at a little more in depth too. I don't know if I can specifically say yes or no, but that's definitely one that we would want more information to look at. And we could discuss that internally to see whether those funds would be considered available. Initial thought is, this is not a yes or no. It would definitely be something we'd have to look at specifically to see what it is that potentially it is available, because there's not that legal obligation to spend the funds. Because even if the school board approves it for the specific purpose, they're not legally. If they turn around and they don't want to for whatever reason, or they don't feel they should for whatever reason, they don't have to at that point to issue those bonds for that gymnasium. Even if the community wants that, they're not legally obligated at that point to do that. So it may come down to that they're not legally obligated, and so then it potentially may be available. We'd have to look more specifically at the information, but at first glance, it sounds like it may be, only because it goes back to, excuse me, it goes back to, are they legally obligated to make that? And I realize that the board wants to do it based on what the community is requesting, but if they didn't, or they couldn't move forward for any reason, they wouldn't be legally obligated, because they haven't signed contracts, they haven't done anything to make it so it's a legal obligation to the school district at that point. And that's what we're looking at. I realize that may not be ideal for the district, but we have to look at it as, the district, are they making all, the basic education code for hardship says, are they make all reasonable efforts to fund their project prior to coming in for us? So then if we see a funding force sitting out there, they may not have met that basic requirement. They may not have made all reasonable effort to fund the project on themselves before coming in for hardship. So we could still look at it, but at least my initial impression is that it's not a legal obligation at that point.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I had a Zoom call and they were doing a webinar.
All right, so it looks like we are just about out of time. Again, any specific questions for financial hardship or the program itself, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will post this recording to the webpage, as well as our OPSC YouTube page, as well as the questions and answers that were addressed today. Thank you so much all for attending.
All right, thank you very much.